The rain lashed against the hotel window like it wanted to punish us. Shane's hands trembled as he unbuttoned my blouse, his breath hot with whiskey and teenage desperation. I did not stop him. The truth is, I had thought about this moment for months, in the grocery store aisles, during Sunday dinners, every time his smirking mouth called me Alicia instead of Mom. But nothing could have prepared me for the acid-sharp guilt that followed, or the way Gilbert's face would crumple when he found out. Before we go further, thank you to everyone watching, especially my new subscribers. Your support fuels this channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will. Your thoughts in the comments mean everything. Now, let me explain how I became the villain of my own life. I am Alicia, 38, a freelance graphic designer from Omaha. My husband, Gilbert, 45, is a pharmaceutical sales director who loves his job more than he loves people. Shane, his son, is 19, all wiry limbs and brooding silences. When Gilbert suggested a road trip to fix things after Shane's latest arrest, I agreed. I had no idea the Toyota's engine would smoke out on a deserted Iowa highway, or that the only motel available would have one bed. The cracks in our family were there long before the car broke down. Gilbert had forgotten our anniversary 3 years straight. Shane wore his mother's suicide like armor, glaring at me across every dinner table. That first night on the road, when Shane joked about my PG-13 playlist and Gilbert ignored us to take a work call, something curdled in my chest. By the time we limped into the motel parking lot, Shane's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Gilbert snapped at the clerk, booked a room, then left to find a mechanic. "Be back by morning," he said, as if we were an errand. The room smelled like mildew and poor decisions. Shane flopped onto the bed, grinning as I hesitated. "What, you scared?" he drawled. I told myself I was staying on the couch to mother him. But when the thunder shook the walls and he whispered, "You're nothing like her," the line between comfort and sin dissolved. In a moment, I will tell you about the text that changed everything. For now, ask yourself, how well do you really know the people you love? Gilbert's suitcase was always packed, not just for business trips, but for life. He compartmentalized emotions like quarterly reports, shelving my loneliness under pending issues and Shane's rage under budget cuts. By the time we crossed into Nebraska on that ill-fated road trip, I had memorized the script of our marriage, his distracted nods, my rehearsed smiles, the way he said, "We'll talk later," as if later ever came. Shane was a different kind of storm. At 19, he carried his mother's death like a grenade pinched between his fingers. Maria had drowned herself in a bathtub when Shane was 12, a fact Gilbert disclosed to me on our third date as casually as mentioning a food allergy. "Tragedy shapes people," he had said. But he never asked what shape Shane's grief had taken. The drinking, the truancy, the way he stared at me when he thought I would not notice. The road trip was Gilbert's idea. He needs structure, he insisted after Shane's DUI arrest, as if highways and motel waffles could glue our fractures shut. For 2 days, we drove in silence punctuated by Shane's sarcasm. He mocked Gilbert's podcasts, my insistence on sunscreen, the way I said Iowa like a tourist. But when Gilbert pulled over to take a call during sunset, Shane's voice softened. "You know he's cheating on you, right?" I laughed. It was easier than admitting I had Googled signs your husband is having an affair 3 times that month. The car broke down outside Des Moines, engine sputtering like a tired old lie. Gilbert popped the hood, scowling at smoke as if it had personally betrayed him. "Probably the alternator," Shane muttered, though Gilbert did not hear. He never heard Shane, not when he begged to live with his grandparents, not when he scraped his knee at 14, not when he whispered, "I hate you" under his breath at Mariah's funeral. That night, At a diner lit by flickering neon, Shane slid into the booth beside me. Gilbert sat across, typing with one hand, fork absently stabbing a salad. Shane's knee brushed mine. I shifted. He did not. When the waitress refilled my coffee, he snatched the pot and poured it himself, his thumb grazing my wrist. "Careful," he said. "It's hot." Back in the car, Gilbert's phone buzzed incessantly. "It's the Johnson account," he barked, as if we had asked. Shane cranked the radio, "Sweet child o' mine," and smirked when I hummed along. "You're cooler than he deserves," he said, low enough that Gilbert would not hear. By the time we reached the motel, the rain had blurred the world into something reckless. Gilbert left us without a backward glance, and Shane's laughter turned sharp, dangerous. He flopped onto the bed, arms behind his head, eyes tracking me as I paced. "Relax," he said. "It's not like he's coming back." I want to say I resisted, that I thought of Vi's, of morality, of Mariah's face in Shane's defiant smirk. But the truth is, when he tugged my hand and said stay, I did not think at all. The cracks were always there. We just chose to fall through them. The motel room's lamp flickered like a dying confession. Shane had stolen a bottle of bourbon from the minibar, its amber glow sloshing between us as thunder rattled the walls. I told myself I would sip just enough to steady my nerves. But when Shane pressed the glass into my hand, his fingers lingering, I drank to forget Gilbert's empty promises, forget the way Shane's eyes mirrored his mother's in certain lights, forget that I was old enough to know better. He sat on the edge of the bed, all sharp angles and restless energy, while I pretended the floral couch was not sagging beneath me. The storm had knocked out the Wi-Fi, leaving us stranded in a bubble of humid silence. Shane broke it first. "You ever wonder why he married you?" The question was a knife, slick with bourbon and bitterness. I did not answer. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You look like her." Not exactly, but close enough. Mariah's ghost had always haunted us. Her face smiled from photo albums Shane kept buried in his closet. Honey blonde, like me. Blue-eyed, like me. But where she had been fragile, a wisp of smoke, I was all edges, a woman who folded laundry with military precision and hid wine in her thermos. Shane resented me for it. Or maybe he resented that I was alive. He stood abruptly, pacing the cramped room like a caged animal. "He doesn't see you," he said. Just like he didn't see her. His voice cracked, and for a moment, he was not the defiant stepson who mocked my casseroles, but the boy who found his mother's body. My chest ached. I reached for him, a reflex, and he caught my wrist. What happened next was not a blur. I remember every detail, the way his callous thumb traced my pulse point, the shudder of his breath when I did not pull away, the cheap polyester comforter scratching my thighs as he pushed me onto the bed. His mouth was softer than I imagined, his hands less sure. "Alicia," he whispered, my name a prayer and a curse, and I let him unravel me. Afterward, he collapsed beside me, sweat and guilt gluing our skin together. The bourbon bottle lay empty on the floor. I stared at the water-stained ceiling, counting cracks like sins. Shane's voice cut through the dark. "This changes nothing." It was a lie, and we both knew it. When dawn crept through the blinds, I dressed in silence. Shane watched me, his expression unreadable. "You'll hate me tomorrow," he said. But he was wrong. I already hated myself. The door slammed as Gilbert returned, shouting about tow trucks and incompetent mechanics. He did not notice my smudged mascara or how Shane refused to meet his eyes. As we piled back into the repaired car, Shane's knee pressed against mine, a secret screaming in the space between us. The storm had passed, but ours was just beginning. Guilt is not a quiet companion. It follows you into the shower, sits at the breakfast table, hums in your ear during traffic. For days, I scrubbed my skin raw, as if soap could erase the memory of Shane's hands. He ignored me, slamming doors and blasting music that shook the walls. Gilbert noticed nothing. He ate his toast, kissed my cheek, and left for work as if the world had not split open. The receipt was my undoing. A slip of paper from the motel's minibar, crumpled in the pocket of Shane's jeans. I found it in the laundry room, bourbon charges glaring up at me like an accusation. I should have burned it. Instead, I tucked it into my wallet, a perverse souvenir. Shane cornered me 3 days later in the garage. His eyes were bloodshot, breath sour with cheap beer. "You gonna tell him?" He sneered, crowding me against the tool bench. I said nothing. He laughed, sharp and hollow. "Didn't think so." When he grabbed my waist, I shoved him. He stumbled, lip curling. "You wanted it. Don't act like a saint now." Gilbert found the receipt that night. I do not know how. Perhaps it fell from my wallet, or Shane planted it like a landmine. He stormed into the kitchen, face purple with rage, waving the paper like a verdict. "One room. One bed. You want to explain this?" His voice cracked, and for a moment, he was just a man, broken, betrayed. I could have lied, blamed Shane, called it a mistake. But the truth clawed its way out, ugly and raw. It was not just the room. Shane appeared in the doorway, grinning like a feral cat. Gilbert lunged, fists clenched, but Shane did not flinch. "You think this was about her?" He spat. "I messed with the car. Let it overheat. Also, you would know what it feels like to lose everything." The room tilted. Gilbert froze, a statue of disbelief. Shane's laugh was a serrated edge. "Mom left a note. Did you even read it?" Gilbert never loved us. "But you were too busy closing deals to notice she was drowning." Gilbert crumpled, a sob tearing from his throat. I reached for him, but he recoiled. "Get out," he whispered. "Both of you." Shane vanished that night, leaving a half-packed duffel and a stench of spite. I slept in my car, the receipt burning a hole in my pocket. The divorce papers arrived in a crisp white envelope, as impersonal as Gilbert's goodbye. He took the house, the car, the framed photos of our mockery of a family. I took a studio apartment above a laundromat, where the rumble of dryers masks the silence. Shane vanished completely, no calls, no texts, just a single Google search alert months later. Shane arrested in Phoenix, possession with intent. I did not click the link. Some ghosts are better left buried. Gilbert changed his number. Mutual friends stopped returning my emails. Even the grocery store cashier averted her eyes when I bought wine at 10 a.m. You never realize how small a town is until it decides you no longer exist. I lost the graphic design contracts first. Clients cited creative differences, but I knew the truth. Gilbert's colleagues golf with CEOs. Shame is contagious. By winter, I was stocking shelves at a 24-hour pharmacy, fluorescent lights bleaching my regrets alongside the linoleum. The night I decided to confess here, on this channel, I found Shane's hoodie buried in a storage bin. It smelled like weed and Axe body spray, a time capsule of his rage. I held it until dawn, wondering if he ever thinks of me, wondering if hate and love are just two sides of the same blade. This is where I tell you, I learned my lesson. That karma humbled me. But the truth is, I would do it all again. Not for Shane, or the cheap thrill of his hands on my hips, but for the raw, ugly truth that shook Gilbert awake. For the first time in years, he felt something. So did I. You want a villain? I am her. A homewrecker, a cliché, a warning stamped on gossip blogs. But before you judge, ask yourself, Have you ever been so lonely you would burn your life down just to feel warm? This channel is my penance, my therapy, my scream into the void. To every viewer listening, thank you for bearing witness to my unraveling. If this story clawed at your soul, do not stay silent. Drop a comment, tell me I am a monster, a fool, a mirror. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have not yet subscribed, hit that button. Your engagement fuels this journey through the dark. This is Alicia, signing off. Until the next confession.